President Trump is leaving Switzerland with a concept of a deal on Greenland in the works.
Trump also commanding the spotlight today over his plan for Gaza. He provided the first detailed look today at his Board of Peace.
When the world's most powerful leaders arrived in Davos, everything looked routine. The same snow-covered streets, the same guarded hotels, the same carefully rehearsed speeches about markets, climate, and global stability. Davos is usually predictable, a place where nothing truly unexpected is supposed to happen. But that calm shattered the moment Donald Trump spoke. Standing before an audience that expected economic forecasts, Trump introduced something entirely different. He claimed that a framework had already been established for a Greenland deal and announced his intention to hold a Board of Peace ceremony. In one sentence, the focus of Davos shifted away from finance and toward geopolitics, sovereignty, and power. The room didn't erupt in applause. It fell into a tense silence.
The United States alone that can protect this giant mass of land, this giant piece of ice, develop it and improve it and make it so that it's good for Europe and safe for Europe and good for us.
Trump spoke confidently, as if this framework had been quietly negotiated behind closed doors. According to him, the deal was not about ownership or conquest. It was about peace, security, and cooperation. Greenland, he said, was essential to global stability in a changing world. The Arctic, once frozen and forgotten, had become central to future trade, defense, and diplomacy. And America, in his words, could not afford to ignore it. What made the statement explosive was not just the claim itself, but the lack of confirmation. Within hours, officials from Greenland pushed back. They said no framework existed. Denmark followed with a similar response, making it clear that no agreement had been discussed, let alone finalized. The contradiction was stark. Trump spoke of progress. The people directly involved denied everything. To understand why this moment mattered, it's important to understand Greenland's role in global politics. Greenland is not just the world's largest island. It sits at the crossroads of the Arctic between North America and Europe. As ice melts, new shipping routes are opening, cutting weeks off traditional trade paths. Beneath the ice lie rare earth minerals, oil, and gas resources that could shape future economies. Militarily, the region offers strategic advantages that major powers cannot ignore. For decades, Greenland remained relatively untouched by global competition. That era is ending fast. Russia has expanded its Arctic military presence. China has declared itself a near-Arctic state and invested heavily in polar research and infrastructure. The United States, already maintaining a military base in Greenland, sees the region as critical to national security. In this context, Trump's renewed interest did not come out of nowhere. What shocked people was how publicly and abruptly it was presented. Rather than stepping back after the denials, Trump doubled down. He announced plans for a Board of Peace ceremony, framing it as a bold new initiative to bring world leaders together and resolve disputes outside traditional institutions. He criticized existing global bodies as slow, ineffective, and trapped in endless bureaucracy. The world, he argued, needed a new approach, one focused on action rather than process. Supporters saw this as classic Trump strategy: create a new platform, control the narrative, force others to respond. To them, the Board of Peace sounded ambitious and refreshing, a chance to bypass systems that had failed to prevent wars and global instability. Trump positioned himself as a dealmaker once again, someone willing to challenge outdated structures in pursuit of peace. But skepticism spread just as quickly. Diplomats questioned what authority this board would have. Who would be invited? Who would enforce decisions? Was this an institution or simply a ceremony? No clear framework was presented, no charter, no rules, just an announcement and a promise. Linking the Board of Peace to the Greenland framework raised even more concerns. Critics argued that Trump was using the language of peace to soften a deeply controversial geopolitical move. By framing Greenland within a broader vision of global harmony, the sovereignty issue became blurred. Greenland's leaders rejected this framing outright. They emphasized that peace could not come at the cost of self-determination. As media coverage intensified, Davos began to feel less like a summit and more like a standoff. European leaders grew uneasy. The Arctic nations urged caution, warning that destabilizing the region could have long-term consequences. Behind the scenes, analysts pointed out that the Arctic's transformation was accelerating faster than diplomacy could keep up. The Board of Peace, despite its name, exposed deeper fractures in global governance. Some countries expressed curiosity. Others quietly distanced themselves. The lack of coordination was telling. In global politics, legitimacy comes from consensus, and consensus was nowhere to be found. Meanwhile, Greenland's message remained consistent. Decisions about Greenland would be made by Greenlanders. Economic partnerships were welcome. Security cooperation could be discussed, but sovereignty was not a bargaining chip. Their response grounded the conversation, reminding the world that strategic interests affect real communities, not just maps and trade routes. As the first phase of Davos concluded, one thing became clear. Trump had once again succeeded in dominating the global conversation. Whether through strategy or instinct, he forced the world to react on his terms. Yet beneath the headlines and speculation, no concrete agreements existed. No documents had been signed, no framework had been revealed. What remained was uncertainty. Was this the opening move of a larger geopolitical shift? Or was it another example of announcement-driven diplomacy designed to test reactions? The answers were not yet visible. But one truth was already emerging. The Arctic is no longer a distant frontier. It is becoming a central stage for global power struggles. And as that stage grows more important, every word spoken about it carries weight. In the next part, the focus shifts from Davos to the deeper motivations behind Trump's move, the economic and military stakes tied to Greenland, and why the idea of a board of peace may be more about control than cooperation. The reaction to Trump's announcement was immediate, both in Greenland and in global capitals. Analysts scrambled to decode what a framework could even mean, while diplomats quietly questioned the feasibility of a board of peace that had no clear legal or institutional foundation. For Greenland, the stakes were existential. The island has a small population, but its location makes it a strategic fulcrum in the Arctic. It sits atop untapped natural resources, from rare earth minerals to oil and gas, and controls critical shipping lanes that will matter more as the ice continues to melt. Any discussion of deals without Greenland's consent is not just politically risky, it's fundamentally impossible. Trump, however, did not retreat. In interviews and on social media, he portrayed the Greenland deal as a natural extension of American leadership. He emphasized that the world needed stronger partnerships to ensure peace, security, and trade, framing the discussion as a proactive solution to global instability. His narrative positioned the United States as the central actor in Arctic affairs, capable of shaping outcomes before crises emerged. In doing so, he drew a sharp contrast with traditional diplomacy, which is often cautious, deliberate, and consensus-driven. Trump's approach was immediate, public, and unfiltered, a style that both unsettled and energized international audiences. Critics argued that the announcement was reckless. Without Greenland's agreement, any perceived deal risked creating tension between the U.S., Denmark, and the island itself. European leaders expressed concern over precedent. If the United States could claim a framework for a strategic territory unilaterally, what message did that send to the rest of the world? The issue was not simply legal, it was reputational. Trust in American commitments, already strained in previous international engagements, faced yet another test. Countries were watching closely, trying to determine whether this was a genuine initiative or a show of power. Meanwhile, the concept of the Board of Peace raised even more questions. Who would sit on it? Would it have real authority, or simply serve as a ceremonial gathering of influential leaders? Observers noted that without clear operational rules, the board risked being dismissed as a symbolic stunt. Yet symbolism can carry enormous weight in geopolitics. By announcing it in Davos, Trump forced global elites to react. He reframed discussions about Greenland from a regional issue into a topic of global strategy, shifting the narrative from sovereignty disputes to broader themes of peace and cooperation. It was a masterclass in controlling the conversation, regardless of the underlying realities. In Greenland, the response was measured but firm. Local leaders reiterated that any decisions regarding land, resources, or infrastructure must involve the Greenlandic people. Economic partnerships were welcome, they emphasized, but sovereignty could not be compromised. At the same time, Denmark, which oversees Greenland's foreign affairs, stressed that no discussions about transfers or frameworks had taken place. Both responses underscored a key truth: talk of deals does not equal deals. Geography and local authority cannot be bypassed with announcements alone. The strategic implications extend far beyond headlines. Greenland sits near the shortest routes between North America, Europe, and Asia, meaning control over Arctic shipping lanes could reshape global trade patterns. Militarily, radar installations, missile tracking, and Arctic defense systems in the region are already critical for monitoring global activity. A Greenland deal would not simply involve land, it would affect economics, infrastructure, and security. Every statement about frameworks and peace boards has ripple effects, forcing nations to reconsider their Arctic posture and alliances. Trump's approach reflects a broader strategy. By making bold public declarations, he creates leverage before formal negotiations begin. International leaders are forced to respond in real time, adjusting plans and statements to align with or counter America's narrative. It's a high-risk, high-reward tactic. If executed successfully, it can accelerate agreements and elevate the U.S. as a central arbiter of emerging conflicts. If mishandled, it risks alienating allies, undermining trust, and creating diplomatic blowback that lasts for years. Despite the uncertainty, one fact stands out. The Arctic is now at the center of global attention in ways it never has been. Climate change, resource competition, and emerging trade routes have transformed Greenland from a remote outpost into a strategic linchpin. Any claim of deals, frameworks, or peace initiatives must be understood against this backdrop. The stakes are high, and every statement matters. As Davos drew to a close, the Board of Peace remained a concept rather than a concrete institution, and the Greenland framework remained contested. Yet Trump had achieved a different objective. He had shifted the global conversation. World leaders, journalists, and investors were now actively discussing Greenland in terms of strategic importance, economic potential, and security implications. Even without agreements, the spotlight on the Arctic was brighter than ever. The coming months will reveal whether these bold declarations translate into action or remain statements of intent. Greenland will continue to assert its sovereignty, Denmark will monitor closely, and the United States will navigate the challenge of pursuing strategic interests without overstepping. For now, the Board of Peace is a symbol, a test, and a reminder that in global politics, perception often matters as much as reality. In the next segment, the focus shifts to the broader implications: how Greenland's resources, climate, and geography intersect with global trade, U.S. defense priorities, and emerging Arctic competition. The Board of Peace may be a ceremony, but its consequences are already shaping the strategies of nations around the world. As the dust settles on Trump's announcement, the bigger picture becomes clearer. Greenland is no longer just a remote icy island. It has become a focal point of global strategy. Its resources, location, and potential trade routes make it central to the emerging Arctic economy. Every statement about frameworks, peace boards, or partnerships affects not just local governance, but international calculations. For Denmark and Greenland, sovereignty remains non-negotiable. For the U.S., the challenge is balancing bold moves with diplomacy, ensuring that ambition does not cross the line into overreach. The Arctic's strategic importance continues to grow as climate change opens new shipping lanes, shortening transit times between Europe, North America, and Asia. The region's untapped rare earth minerals, oil, gas, and critical infrastructure make it a prize for global powers. Trump's Board of Peace announcement, while symbolic in execution, forced world leaders and investors to pay attention. It highlighted the tension between political theater and actual policymaking, showing how announcements alone can shift discussions in international corridors of power. Global reactions illustrate the complexity of the issue. European leaders stress that agreements must be multilateral, Greenlandic authorities insist on local involvement, and American allies are cautious but attentive. Meanwhile, the Arctic is entering a new era where economic opportunity, environmental responsibility, and military strategy intersect. The Greenland Framework and Board of Peace concept serve as reminders that diplomacy is evolving. It is no longer just about formal treaties, but also about shaping perception, signaling priorities, and influencing global narratives. Ultimately, the real story is about leverage. Trump's public declaration may not create instant treaties, but it has shifted the conversation. Greenland's role in trade, resources, and security is now center stage. The coming months will show whether the Board of Peace translates into concrete collaboration or remains symbolic. Either way, the announcement has set a precedent. Bold public diplomacy can redefine strategic conversations, force global recalculations, and highlight regions that were once overlooked. The key takeaway is that global politics now moves as much in the realm of perception as in action. For Greenland, the message is clear. Its sovereignty and resources are valuable, and the world is paying attention. For the U.S., it is a reminder that ambition must align with respect and cooperation. And for viewers, analysts, and policymakers, it is proof that even an icy island at the edge of the world can shape global strategy in profound ways.